Moshiach is nicht gekommen in Zeiten für Rishonen ins nicht heimgenommen in Zeiten für Nachroinen doch haben wir Atra
Rosh Hashanah, it's the Rosh Hashanah for the for what we call the Torah Shvat, the seventh generation, our generation. All year long, we do Torah mitzvahs. We're engaged in serving the Eibishter all the time, but we're primarily involved in what we call the branches of Yiddishkeit. All the details of being a Jew. Rosh Hashanah, we hear the sound of the shofar. So the shofar calls us back to the core point. It calls us back to the nucleus of what is it really all about. And during the entire Rosh Hashanah, we proclaim and we align ourselves and we synchronize ourselves with the real purpose and inner essence of what Judaism is all about. And that is to make the Eibishter a king over the entire world. That the Eibishter should finally have his dira b'tachtainim, his dwelling place as a king over the world in this world. And we, each and every one of us, dedicate ourselves towards that, with our full heart and whole soul, and a complete Kabbalah's Oil Malchus Shemayim. And that's the reorientation every Rosh Hashanah. All year long as Chassidim, we're also involved in all the details in which a Rebbe, a Nasi of the generation, which within the context of general Torah and mitzvah observance, there is the special hayrais, the special teachings and energy that is particularized to that particular generation, because what a Rebbe gives us is what does the Eibishter want from the Jewish people now, not just in general. What is the special avodah for this generation? All year long, we're busy doing all the stuff. We're davening, we're learning special learnings that we're giving Chitas and Rambam, and we're doing Mivtzayim and different types of Mitzayim relating to the different times of the year. What we're doing, whether it's a menorah on the car or a public menorah, or giving out matzah, or giving ice cream to children to come to shul for shvuas, faseres adibris. These are all manifestations and details of being a chassid and being connected to the Rebbe. But on Yud Shvat, we come back to the essence, to the core, to the root, to what our generation and our iskashris is all about. And we come back to the shofar gadol, to the great shofar. And what's that shofar? Basi lagani achayisi kala. We watch and we watch the Rebbe saying Basi lagani. We learn the Maimer Basi lagani, and we tune in again to what the Rebbe is saying. Basi lagani. Basi lagani is the essence of this generation. And what is that? The completion of the job of all the generations in bringing the Shechina down, the Poyel Mamish, into this world. In other words, when we hear the electric current of Basi Lagani, because sadly, a lot of times, since we know that Yud Shvat is Basi Lagani season, we can read Basi Lagani in a detached state because everybody knows what it says in the first ois of Basi Lagani. So let's get further. Let's find something interesting which relates to this particular year. But that's very wrong, because Chassidus is the Shmasa Dairaisa, it's the Neshama of Torah. So we have to tap into it and connect to the soul. We have to feel that powerful godly current running through the Rebbe when he's saying Basi Lagani, and feel and sense the vision and the drive towards the complete Geula. And when we tap into that and we get to the Elokus of Basi Lagani, that's what we do as Chassidim on Rosh Hashanah, on Yud Shvat. But, as mentioned before, every year has its particular Chiddush. So what's the Chiddush in Basi Lagani this year? So we know this year we are studying chapter 11, Perek Yud Aleph in Basi Lagani. And what does it say? And Perek Yud Aleph is particularly connected to the Rebbe. In a sense, we can say more than all the other Seifim and Prakim in Basi Lagani. Why? Because the Rebbe's number is number 11. The Rebbe is born on Yud Aleph Nisan, the 11th of Nisan. The Rebbe becomes a Rebbe on the 11th year, Tafshin Yud Aleph. In the 11th month, Chodesh Ashtei Asar, as the Rebbe says, Chodesh Shvat, which is the 11th month. And even though we celebrate Yud Shvat, the Rebbe writes in this week's Sicha, Pashas Va'era, Tafshin Nun Beis, the Rebbe says that what shayches to him is Yoim Ashtei Asar Yoim B'Chodesh Ashtei Asar. The 11th day of the 11th month, because Yud Shvat is still the culmination of the previous Rebbe. Yud Aleph Shvat, which is Yud Aleph, in Yud Aleph. So everything about the Rebbe, all across the board, is Yud Aleph, and the Rebbe teaches us that there is, who like the Rebbe has taught us that there's no randomness by anything in the world, especially not by a Yid, and especially not by a Nasi, and definitely by the Kol HaShvi and Chaviv Nasi. Every little detail is so accurate. So number 11 is very significant, and we can say that the Frierdiker Rebbe, who's writing and saying Basi Lagami and giving it out Beruach HaKodesh, like we clearly saw, so this detail of what states in number 11 is also Beruach HaKodesh. So what does it say in what does it talk about in Perek Yud Aleph? It talks about a final victory. It mentions over there that Yidden are called Tzivos Hashem, the armies of the Eibishter. When we went out of Mitzrayim, what's the content of an army? What's the point of an army? To achieve victory. An army is not here to lose battles. An army is here to win battles, to be winners, not losers. So there is this great and cosmic battle. And the victory of the battle is when V'hoy Hashem lemelech al kol ha'aretz b'poyol mamish, when the Eibishter is going to be a king over the entire world, literally. And that battle is through the koyach, through the army, and but the drive in an army is the drive is what he calls the name of Hashem associated with nitzachon, with winning, is the name tzvakos. And tzvakos is a name associated with netzach. Netzach means victory, perseverance. There is a powerful drive to win. And the Rebbe over there, the Frierdiker Rebbe, says that powerful drive to win is only found by a melech. Regular people might have everybody has mitzat shleimus hanefesh, the completion of the soul. Everybody has a little bit of netzach inside of them. But the real depth and power of netzach, potency, let's say, of netzach, is dafka by, not even by ministers, not even by governors, by dafka by a king. A king has midas hanitzachim. So it's clear, the Frierdiker Rebbe is talking about, the Rebbe is the seventh one. Within all the Rabbeim are kings. Man malke rabbanon. A Nasi, as the Rebbe always says. A Nasi is a melech. But from all the Rabbeim, the Inyan of Malchus is the seventh Nasi, more than all others, because he personifies Malchus. From the seventh Tzaddikim, great Tzaddikim, Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, but only David is David HaMelech. Yosef is Yosef HaTzadik. But David is David HaMelech. The Rebbe is Rebbe HaMelech. And Dafke in chapter 11, he talks about Melech. But Melech is nice, it's all good, yeah, Melech. But Melech without victory is not much of a Melech. He has to win. And you see the Melech, as the Frierdiker Rebbe says, in that final battle, when it comes to the Nitzachim, it touches him, it reaches him in such a deep core place that the king gives it literally his all. And when you say his all, it means mamish, mamish, mamish is everything. And that everything means even things that are so precious to him, so deeply precious to him, treasures that he has, you call national treasures that are sitting, that he has from his grandparents and great-grandparents all the way back, which he doesn't even show to anybody. And there might be exceptional occasions when he allows people a little peek at these things. When, let's say, he's marrying off his one and only child. The Frierdiker Rebbe doesn't mention this, but the Rebbe mentions this in the Maayon, in his commentary on the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maayon, that at certain times a melech, a king, will show treasures, like when Achashverosh made a big party. But in this case, there he brings when Belshazzar made a party, and he showed the Caleb of the Beis HaMikdash. So there are times. Why? Because your children reach you in a very deep place. So when you're marrying off your one and only child, the crown prince, then you will show people, but you won't spend it. He spends a fortune, but not that. That means that this is deeper, in a sense, connected to the king, even in a sense more than the at least the wedding of his one and only child. But when it comes to winning a battle, when someone is challenging the authority of the king, in order to win and to prove his kingship and his authority, for that the king not only does he allow people to see the treasure, he takes the treasure, he distributes it if he needs the resources for the war, but when he does it in a way that he squanders it. That means not in a controlled manner, but in a way of squandering. That shows because that there's something that he's rallied up, something is touching him in such a core place that even what is the most meaningful, held the closest to his heart, becomes utterly insignificant in comparison to the victory. This is unbelievable. And the Friediger, and what's that victory? What is the victory that we're talking about? So especially if we're talking about a king whose wars are the wars of the Eibishter. So going back to the Jewish people, we see the Jewish people are called Tzivos Hashem, the army of Hashem. But when were we called Tzivos Hashem? We were called Tzivos Hashem when we went out of Mitzrayim. Next week's Parasha, Parshas Boy, Yotzu Tzivos Hashem. It's interesting, Parshas Boy, when we Yidden are called Tzivos Hashem, the army of Hashem, is always the week of Yud Shvat, Boy or Beshalach. At that time when we're called Tzivos Hashem is Yud Shvat. Because you see an interesting thing. The concept that Jews are called Tzivos Hashem, you find it when we go out of Mitzrayim, but yet we don't continue with that description about the Jewish people. We're called Am Yisroel, we're called Bnei Yisroel, we're called Beis Yaakov. We have all kinds of names, but I'm not a Baki b'Tanakh, I don't know all of Tanakh, but I'm not familiar with Yidden being called a tzava, an army. There is a Jewish military, but that the Jewish people as a whole are called an army, Tzivos Hashem. When we went out of Mitzrayim, we're called Tzivos Hashem. And for thousands of generations, that name kind of disappeared. Where did it come back? It came back by the Rebbe. The Rebbe brings back a concept of Tzivos Hashem. Most strongest, the Rebbe brought back Tzivos Hashem when the Rebbe introduced the Tzivos Hashem, the children's Tzivos Hashem. So that's, but even before that, when the Rebbe has again, I'm not exactly sure historically what took place when, but when the Rebbe rolls out tanks, mitzvah tanks, and for the woman he starts a mitzvah called Neshek, Neir Shabbos Kodesh, there is suddenly this sense that we have a military over here. So it's an interesting thing. If you go through history, when a Jew is learning Torah somewhere in Poland, okay, Limud Torah, he wakes up middle of the night. Yidden used to wake up Chatzos, and they spent for hours studying Torah. Did that Jew studying Torah feel like a militant, that he's part of an army? He's here in a war? Absolutely not. A Yid who's running the Tenchi Shabbos, he's a kind Jew, feeding the whole world. He has a big soup kitchen and doing all kinds. Does he have a sense of militance? There is a war. Of course, everybody has to always fight with their Yetzer Hara. But did these people identify themselves? Did Yeshiva Bachrim identify themselves? Did Rabbanim identify themselves, most of the cases, as warriors? Not really. There are cases where there were certain battles that needed to be fought. But your identity as a Jew, as a warrior, not really. Where did the warrior element come back? Dafka where? In Deir Shvi. And the answer is, why not in all of history? Because the battle that Jews are fighting is sensed right at the beginning when the Eibishter rallied us up. The vision is that Judaism is not just something we practice so that we can get close to Hashem on a personal level, but that Judaism has a collective mission to combat darkness and combat evil and get rid of the Sitra Achra and get rid of, as the Friediger Rebbe says in the Maimer, that when is the Eibishter called Tzavakos? When he is loichem b'rishoyim, when he's fighting the wicked, that's when he's called Tzavakos. So it's this idea to combat darkness. Now, in the beginning, we have to set ourselves straight. We have to have that orientation. And then when we get to the final moments of this battle, all along of history, we're all busy doing whatever we're doing. There has always been a milchama, a war, but the war, every time a Yid overcame his or her Yetzer Hara and did something good or fought with some darkness in the world, it's all pieces of this war, but it's all coming together and culminating in the last offense, which is going to take place with the last generation. And the Rebbe rallies up the armies for the last devastating blow to the other side, to cut it down completely, and ultimately to hoist the flag of victory. And until we don't complete that work, and the completion of the work is not be'etzem just decimating the klipa, but it's also raising the flag and declaring victory. Until we don't finish that, there is no nitzachon. As the Rebbe says in the Maimer, the concept of an army, if you do want to trace it in Chabad itself, a little back, we can trace it back to the Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe Rashab started, if we can say, organized Chassidus amongst Chassidus. Chassidus, meaning he organized in general Chassidus, his Chassidus is very organized, but he organized the study of Chassidus in the form of a yeshiva. So, we can give all kinds of, we have a great understanding of the significance of a yeshiva. This is the first time Bachrim and people can learn Chassidus in a systematic way. We can understand how this is going to enhance the Chassidic experience, and so on and so forth. All these ideas, and that we will become really deeper Chassidim because we're able to really integrate it from a very young age. It's an amazing accomplishment. But to the Chassidim, that's what it is. It's an opportunity to get out of a year of love and fear of Hashem and grow your spiritual side. But the Rebbe Rashab gives an astounding sikha. What does he say about the identity of Tomchei Temimim? He says, I'm creating a military. What's the military? This military is going to fight. This is going to be the army. Isn't it amazing? Every time the Rebbe talks about Tomchei Temimim, the Rebbe always brings it back. Not always, but many, many times at least. The Rebbe always brings it back to this famous Sicha HaYadua, the famous talk of the Rebbe Rashab, in which he says that you're going out to the war. Who's military? David HaMelech is a king. David Malka Mashiach. He has to complete the final battle to get rid of all the opposition. Again, as the Maayon explains, you can't fight a war if there's no opposition. And that's why immediately the Rebbe Rashab, who senses and knows the emes, can see Beruach HaKodesh that the other side is going to put up the biggest fight ever. And it's going to come in two forms of two generations. One generation that's going to fight, it's going to be apathetic and cold to Yiddishkeit. A generation, sadly, even of Jews who will, apikorsim, people that are complete heretical beliefs, and they want to fight against Judaism. And we're going to have to fight, and that was the first generation. Everything that he did, the Rabbeim, everything they do is Nevuah, everything is Ruach HaKodesh. And literally, that's what happened to Friedrich Rebbe's days. You have to battle communism. But the second generation, he says, is going to be a generation that's going to be okay with Torah and mitzvahs. No more opposition. We're going to come to America. It's going to be a free world. But there is going to be this deep opposition towards Mashiach. Because since Mashiach is the ultimate victory. So how is the other side going to stop Mashiach from coming? By creating within the Jewish world itself, people that learn Torah and do mitzvahs, but for some reason Mashiach irks them. Talking about Mashiach, expressing Mashiach, connecting to Mashiach, somehow we get uncomfortable. And this goes deeper and deeper and deeper, even in the Jewish community, and probably even seeping in even to the inner core of Chassidim. Where even over here, as the Rebbe himself said when the Rebbe started Niftzah Mashiach, the Rebbe himself is wondering, and he's saying, take a look, Yidden, Chassidim, every Niftzah I gave you, I felt like, I know, it's a challenge, but you guys stood up and went with it all the way. The Niftzah Mashiach, the Rebbe says, Kumt on Zeir Shver. It's coming on difficult, and that's already what the Rebbe Rashab said. That this army that's going to have to win this war is going to have to fight a certain coldness, a certain indifference, a certain silencing of the power of Mashiach in the world. But what does the Rebbe say over here? That an amazing thing. He says that if you think about in this sikh and Tafshin Chaf Aleph, the Rebbe's sikh, which the Rebbe explains, Perek Yud Aleph, there's two Maimarim, and in both Maimarim the Rebbe says this. It's so stunning. The Rebbe says that he brings from the Rebbe Rashab that why do we find that David HaMelech is sometimes called David, and sometimes David HaMelech is called Ben David. The Mashiach, sometimes is called Ben David, and sometimes he's called David. What's the reason? So he brings in a letter from the Rebbe Rashab where he explains that when Mashiach is not yet so known, and definitely when he's not b'toikif, in other words, he's not yet fully manifest and fully powerful over the entire world, then he's called Ben David. When Mashiach finally gains world recognition, and everybody knows who he is, then he's called David itself. Ba'avdi David nasi lahem lo'elam. That's when Mashiach is in his full power, full revelation, full manifestation. So the Rebbe says, now we can understand why the Rebbe Rashab, when he creates Tomchei Temimim, calls the army Kol Hayotzei L'Milchemes Beis David, because Beis David is similar to Ben David. In other words, the war takes place when Mashiach is not yet fully revealed in the world, when is only Ben David, and what's the toichin of the victory that we have to bring about? It should be from Ben David, should become David. And that's where we see is the biggest resistance. Actually to lift up the flag of Mashiach Tzidkenu, that the whole world should see Mashiach Tzidkenu, to give over Besudas HaGeula, and not only Besudas HaGeula, but Besudas HaGeula, the Nevuah of the Geula, and Besudas HaGoyel. All these inyanim the world is waiting for us to be able to do proudly and strongly. Wave that flag. And now, at these last seconds, when we see, if you ever had a moment in history which is a very, at least for a second, seems to be frightening, of what the Alter Rebbe describes, Rishoyim Goyvrim Boy, a certain blackout that suddenly happened, powerful forces of the other side, we need to deal a death blow to the Klippa. And that requires Chassidim to rise. All of us, in other words, we have to become back to feel like the army again. We are like we always sing, whether it's Kinnis HaShluchim, a person, an onlooker coming from a different community, doesn't really get it. He hears Lubavitcher singing, nation after nation, we are conquering. What kind of conqueror? We're conquerors. You're a Yid. You daven Shachris Mincha Ma'ariv, you go to shul, you daven, you learn. What's conquest? Now, those connected to the Rebbe is the greatest warrior. He's fighting the final battle, and he called upon us to join him in that battle. And this is the year. It's amazing how the year of Yud Aleph, Chaf Aleph, and everything around the world, the whole chessboard is setting everything up for this final confrontation. And what does it take in our part? The revelation of Mashiach. Umdu hachen kulchem, that we should stand all together, shoulder to shoulder. In other words, our preparation for this Yud Shvat needs to be coming to roll call. This is the last roll call. I know it from where? From a kishkis, I can't say a source, but I think everybody knows it and everybody feels it. After everything we've been done, that we will not have another chance. Achshav higia hazman, for us to rise as the Rebbe's army, as Tzivos Hashem, and declare to the entire world, Hine Mashiach ba. Every Lubavitcher needs to open up and give Besudas HaGeula. Everybody. And if you don't know, quickly learn. You really have this information. The Rebbe is one neshama with all of us. We all have that emunah. We all have that strength. We all have it in our kishkis. We all have it in our inner being. Allow it to come out. It takes sometimes, it's tapping into the sichas with the Rebbe, especially Nun Aleph and Nun Beis. Go back in and allow those sichas, allow that information to come flowing into you as it was back then, those that were around then in Nun Aleph and Nun Beis, how deeply and strong we felt it then. Yes, there was a hell and the Hester. Yes, the Medrash tells us that Mashiach is revealed and then he's concealed and then he's revealed again. But now it's Higia Hazman. Now is the time. And we have to do it. We're gonna do it. Chassidim, let's get up, as we say in Friday night. Hisnari may offer kuli. Shake yourself from the dust of the last 28 years of darkness. Shake it off, all the svekis, all the questions. This year, interesting, is 781 is Gematria Yisroel Amalek. Exactly. Yisroel Amalek. This is a final battle. Amalek is doubts. Amalek is questions. How in the world as Chassidim can we doubt if the Rebbe knew what he's talking about in 2 years of Sichos, where we believe him in every little thing he said, even during that time when people were wondering, well, what in the world is he saying? And at the very same time, we believe every word. People did operations, shidduchim, the biggest questions were asked, and every word of our Rebbe is kodesh kadoshim. But for some reason, dafka, the main message that the Rebbe told, and the Rebbe told all the shluchim, that this is our avodah right now. Everything is done. Miftzah Mashiach, revealed to the entire world Mashiach. This is the nitzachim, and it is right now. Chassidim, let's do it. We could do it. Let's do it. And as a good friend of mine always says, it's much easier done than said. Let's remember that. Stop thinking, overthinking, stop talking a lot. Let's just do it heads on.
Moshiach is nicht gekommen in Zeiten für Rishoyne, ins nicht heimgenommen fin achroine doch haben mir atras sie werden uns gelassen alla charoina charo Moshiach ist nicht gekommen Rabbi